Oh man, look at this tree. It's wonderful. As I was walking up this road, I was finding myself thinking, is it healthy? Will it survive? Will it outlive me? And I think the answer to that question comes down to the health of its roots and how stable and how grounded it is. And the same could be said about humans. I think strength is one of those undeniable qualities that we could all strive for, and not just in terms of how much you can deadlift or how well you can squat or lunge. Don't get me wrong, those things are important. But what I want to talk about in this video is the strength of your roots and the health of your feet. I talk to people every day whose feet are struggling to keep up with the pace of life that they want to live, because as we approach and move past the age of about 40, it does become more difficult to regenerate certain muscle tissue. So in this video, I want to share with you 3 of the most powerful exercises for strengthening the feet and a couple of little drills just to show you how important the big toe is, because a lot of this stuff is about the big toe. I like to think of the big toe as very different from the other toes. It's really kind of steering the ship, and to explain that and to get you to fully understand it, I want you to do this little exercise with me. Okay, stand up with me, put your feet on the floor. You can even keep your shoes on, it doesn't really matter. What I want you to do is drive the big toe of the left foot into the ground and completely relax the rest of the body, and just tune into what happens when you drive that big toe into the floor. Now what you might find will happen as you drive the left toe into the ground is that you turn to the right. And if you then drive the right toe into the ground, you might find that you turn to the left. And if you start alternating that, pressing the left toe and the right big toe, and completely relax the upper body, you'll find that you can generate some momentum here. And this is a great way to just give you a sense of how important the big toe is and how connected it is to the rest of your body. Now, if you felt that connection between the big toe and the rest of your body, then that is great, that is awesome. But if not, the rest of the exercises in this video are really gonna help, so stick around. Let's head to the gym. So where do we start training the big toe, and how can we get a sense for how much movement we have, and how do we build that motion and that movement and stability? Well, initially in my programs, I encourage people to get into a dorsiflexion sit, which I think is one of the best moves for just freeing up motion in the lower body, because we're at full extension of the toe, we're at full flexion of the knee, and being able to demonstrate those two things at the same time is pretty essential for a healthy body. That's why the dorsiflex sit position, or what's commonly called the Caesar position in martial arts, is such a foundational movement practice that is ever present throughout so many different types of martial art. And if you've ever done any martial art, you probably know that a lot of the power that we can generate comes through the feet, where the feet are really able to grip the ground, and that's where we can deliver our powerful kicks with those really strong tree roots that are gripping into the ground with the feet. So if the dorsiflexion sit is too much for you, then what I recommend is starting from an all fours position and rocking back into that very gently. Now, it's become apparent from talking to people who go through my programs that even that is a little bit too much. So in this video, I want to give you an even further regression where we can start building some mobility in the big toe. Whenever I'm coaching a movement, I like to ask myself, am I going to be able to get this person to understand strength, mobility and stability? I'm going to try and do that in these couple of different exercises that I'm going to show you. So first, we can start with the big toe, simply just mobilizing it. So we're going to move the big toe in flexion and extension, and we can do that simply with the hands, moving it back and forth and gaining a little bit more range of motion every time. We can bring in some PNF stretching here, whereby we force against the pressure that we're putting on the fingers. So as I'm pulling the fingers back, I can force forward with the toe and do it in the other way. So as I'm pulling the toe back into flexion here, I can push against my fingers with the toe, and that way we're building mobility and we're building strength. So if you do have a really immobile big toe that is not flexing and extending very well, this is a really good place to start. And freeing up some motion and strength and stability in the toes is ultimately going to result in a healthier foot. But even though this exercise is great, we really have a limitation here in that we're only really working with the hardware of the body. We're really forcing the joints into a position, and we're not really giving much of a chance for the body to act on its own accord. In other words, to work with the software. So in order to understand this hardware-software thing, I think it's useful to think about the software more being the neurology and the brain connecting with the muscles in order to fire motor patterns and to move things on their own accord, rather than you just actually grabbing the toes and moving them around. So that's what we're going to do in this next movement. So this is a movement in which we are independently moving the big toe of the rest of the other toes, and we're doing it without any help from my fingers, that I'm not assisting in any way. Initially, you can use a bit of assistance from the fingers to pin those little toes down if you need to. When I first started doing this, I found it super frustrating because I was really trying to work very hard, and I was doing all sorts of weird things with my fingers, trying to get the big toe to start moving independently of the other toes. But what I found is actually just relaxing a little bit more and maybe keeping a soft bend in the knees and putting less effort into the movement and really just imagining and visualizing the movement pattern happening actually helped a lot more than really trying to force it and fire motor patterns with, just pure strength. A lot of the time you'll just run up against a head wall, you'll get frustrated and you won't be able to make any gains because you'll just be super frustrated from the movement. So a softer approach is often necessary, and a lot of the times it's far more effective. So if you can do this straight away and you've got a really good sense for it, that is a really good sign. You should be very grateful and very happy with that because you've got smart feet and you haven't had to work on it. Whereas myself and many other people have to work on this for quite a long time in order to get those patterns happening. So there we've ticked the box on our strength and mobility aspect, but what about the stability aspect? Well, this is where it becomes really interesting, and it's also where it becomes much more relevant, especially to hiking and walking. So for standing toe extensions, we're going to start in a staggered stance with the feet directly underneath the hips. Then all we're going to do is simply rock forward to place the weight onto the big toe. And we're going to feel a nice big stretch in the big toe, maybe a little bit in the plantar fascia, and then slowly rock back down onto the heel. And this is a fairly simple drill, but if you've got a really tight and immobile big toe, you will find that it is going to be difficult. And that's a really good sign that you should be doing this movement. It's very simple. We're just patterning back and forth that toe off, really pressing down through the base of the first metatarsal, so the base of the big toe, not really the big toe itself, but the base here where it connects to the rest of the foot. That's where we press through. So on the right here, we can see the flow motion model from Gary Ward, which shows how the body weight is distributed through the foot as you take every step. So I think it can be really useful to keep this in mind as you shift your weight forward and back in all of these standing toe extension drills. If you are really tight in this, it could be possible that you do too much too soon. So just do a little bit, see how you recover the next day, see how you feel, and then come back to it. I would say 2 sets of 20 reps is a really good start here. Now let's say you've worked on that for a few weeks, it's starting to get better, you've got a little bit more motion in your toes, and it's generally feeling a lot stronger and more protected. Or maybe you did that drill, but you don't really feel much and it feels pretty easy. Then you can move straight on to this one. Here we're going to be replicating the gait pattern, and we're going to be stepping back and forth in a very slow motion. So as slow as possible. When you're starting out with this, it can be a little bit faster, but as you get better, you can start to move a lot more slowly. And at the final level, you can do this with your eyes closed. So just patterning that movement as we rock back and forth and we shift weight from this position through the whole gait cycle of the foot, back into the forward position where the weight is on the front leg, and we're just patterning that back and forth. But there's nothing inherently dangerous about this. We're just experimenting with a very basic movement. Well, it is complex movement, of course, because it's involved the foot, but this is essentially such a basic movement that you do every day. But what I'm doing here, what I'm encouraging, is to get you to slow down and really pay attention to the complexities and the nuance of the movement, so that you can start to get a good understanding of how things roll through the foot. And if we can do that in the gym, the likelihood is we're going to get better each step outside, and it's going to result in a lot less issues upstream when we can really get a good sense for that toe moving freely. Now, is this absolutely the end of the world if you can't flex and extend your big toe properly? No, it's not, but you are going to be compensating in some way, meaning that there's going to be flow-on effects from that, which may be impacting the rest of the joints. Now, you could have a completely fixed toe, or you could have no toe. One of my friends, Michael Groom, who I've climbed with, He has absolutely no toes on either of his feet. He lost all of them in Kachinjunga. He lost 50% of his feet. He manages to do all of this stuff very well at a very high level. So if he can do it, you can do it. But the interesting thing about Michael is that when he got home with no feet, he had to teach himself how to walk again. And that takes a lot of mental strength and a lot of effort and a lot of patterning, new patterns for the neurology to update this system. And you're going to have to do the same thing. So I hope you found this enlightening. I hope it helps. I'm sure it will. If any of these exercises are difficult for you, that's a pretty good sign that you should be doing them. So I would start today. Put some decent effort in for 4 weeks, doing these exercises regularly. Test and retest the flexion and extension of your toes, and if things are getting better, you're on the right track. And also, if you want to know why this movement, the Seiza or the dorsiflexion sit, is so important, not just for hiking, but for general everyday health, then go to my app. You can see the link in the description. There's a 5-minute routine, and you can do that every single day and slowly start building towards your dorsiflexion sit, where we regress it just to this very basic level. So that would be something you can work up to if all of this stuff in this video is pretty easy. The 5-minute routine itself is actually free on YouTube. I'll leave it here. You can watch it right now. But then in the app is where we go into the progressions and regressions of all those exercises, which means it's a very short and easy routine for you to do every day, and it progresses and grows as you do and as you develop like a beautiful flower. That's all for this one. I'll see you on the summit.